Look at Shanti today. She lives a life defined by heavy velvet curtains, silk saris, and the gentle hum of ceiling fans in spacious, perfectly decorated rooms. She is the wife of a wealthy stockbroker, firmly secured at the top of Lahore's high society. Yet, pacing through her sprawling home, Shanti feels entirely suffocated. Surrounded by expensive brass ornaments and thick rugs, she compares herself to a wild bird that has been captured and locked inside a decorative hanging cage. That feeling of suffocation boiled over earlier this afternoon. Right in the middle of a high-stakes bridge game with prominent guests, a destitute, poorly dressed woman appeared at her door. Instead of turning her away, Shanti abandoned her wealthy partners, ran to the door, and pulled the woman into a desperate, passionate embrace. Her husband, Lala Deendayal, was livid. To him, parading an uncouth, lower-class woman in front of prominent elites like Rai Sahib was an unforgivable humiliation. He delivered a brutal ultimatum. Shanti had to immediately cut all ties with this intruder and remember her place, leaving Shanti alone in her room, heartbroken and paralyzed. Which raises an obvious question: who is this destitute woman? And why on earth would a wealthy socialite risk her carefully curated reputation to hold her? This confrontation reveals the cracks in Shanti's elite life. She is holding on to a secret connection from her past, one that her husband is now desperate to keep buried in the slums. To understand that connection, we have to rewind 10 years earlier, to the damp, overcrowded slums of Mahilal Street. Before the silk saris, Shanti and her husband were impoverished laundry workers. They barely scraped by, spending their days boiling water, scrubbing clothes, and living in a tiny, dark room directly behind the shop. Downstairs lived Gomti. She was the dark-skinned daughter of a local temple priest, a woman who wore soiled clothes and lived alongside the lowest castes in the neighborhood. Shanti looked at Gomti with absolute disgust. In Shanti's mind, her own poverty was temporary, and viewed Gomti's lower social standing as a permanent stain she wanted nothing to do with. She went out of her way to make this hostility physical. When Gomti and the poorer neighbors started using the building's communal water tap, Shanti forced her husband to install a wooden box and a heavy padlock over it, keeping the key strictly to herself. Yet Gomti kept showing up. She would come upstairs to ask for the key, sit on the steps, and persistently try to break the ice with friendly conversation, completely ignoring Shanti's coldness. Shared poverty alone did not unite them. Shanti actively built artificial walls of class prejudice, desperately trying to maintain a false sense of superiority over the people struggling right next to her. That false superiority collapsed on a freezing December night. Shanti's husband suddenly fell violently ill, struck down by a severe case of gastroenteritis. At the exact same time, her young son, Omi, began coughing heavily. His forehead burned like an iron skillet as a life-threatening bout of pneumonia took hold. Shanti was entirely alone. She had no family nearby, no money for a private nurse, and absolutely no way to care for a dying husband and a dying child simultaneously. Desperate and terrified, she swallowed every ounce of her pride. She ran downstairs, found the neighbor she had openly despised, and begged Gomti for help. Gomti did not hesitate for a second. She abandoned her family's dinner on the stove and took off in a full sprint through the dark, winding alleys to fetch a doctor. Over the grueling days that followed, Gomti effectively moved into the tiny apartment. She entirely took over the care of the sick child, feeding him, monitoring his fever, and sacrificing her own sleep so Shanti could focus on saving her husband. One afternoon, while the house was finally quiet, Shanti woke from an exhausted sleep to find Gomti sitting on the floor, tenderly singing a rustic village lullaby to the boy. Staring at Gomti's face bent over her child, the weight of that selfless heart hit Shanti. She pulled Gomti onto the bed, held her tightly, and through tears declared her a sister. As the two women sat together on that bed, the years of prejudice and the padlock on the water tap vanished. The survival of Shanti's family was now inseparable from the woman she once treated with contempt. But 10 years later, that warmth is gone. We snap back to her present-day luxury, where the emotional connection of that cramped slum has been replaced by the cold, sterile rules of high society. Now, Shanti faces an agonizing dilemma. The elite world demands she sever the most profound, life-saving bond she has ever known, simply to protect her husband's superficial status. She sits at her desk and tries to write a letter formally ending the friendship. But how do you justify abandoning the person who saved your family? She writes, struggles, and rips the page to shreds. Ultimately, she takes the coward's way out. Instead of looking Gomti in the eye, Shanti hands a message to her servant, instructing him to lie and say she has left town for 2 months. To maintain her new life, she has voluntarily locked herself back into a cage. She cuts off the only person in the world who truly knows who she is. Shanti stands alone at her window, watching the darkness grow. She has secured her place in the upper class, but to keep it, she has accepted the bars of her own gilded cage, sacrificing her truest friend for the sake of her reputation.